Hello everyone, how you doing? It's Bill from the Voniverse. This video is going to be my top 25 favorite artists. I was inspired to do this video from Hanna over at the Omaha Introvert. She recently put her top 20 favorite artist list together and did a video about it, and like I said, that inspired me to do this. I've seen a lot of people do their top 100 favorite albums, and as much as I would like to do that type of video or series of videos, right now for me it's just too daunting a task. I'd have a very tough time figuring all that out. So maybe down the road, but right now I thought doing my top 25 favorite bands, artists would be the way to go. I figured I'd, now Hannah did 20, her top 20. I thought I'd do 25, and the first 5 I'll just mention the band's name. I won't really go into any detail. But this list is, obviously for everybody, it's very subjective. Everyone has their own tastes, musical interests. So this is my list. My current favorites. So if you don't agree, that's perfectly fine. No need to point anything out. This is my list, and just what I like. Now I'm not going to show anything that's obscure or anything like that. Everyone should be somewhat aware of these bands and artists. So, yeah, so starting at 25, Rush. Then 24 might surprise some people, the Rolling Stones. I say might surprise people because they might figure this would be higher on the list. And I'm sure it is for other folks. Number 23, the band Gentle Giant. Great prog band, one of my favorites. Number 22, another great prog band, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This is their album Tarkus. Let's see, number 21, great band Supertramp. Awesome album here, Crime of the Century. Really love this album. Recommend everyone check it out. It's so good. So number 20. Starting the true list here, the top 20. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. So when Tom Petty came up, when he got big in the late 70s, early 80s, I was just really discovering music, and with the advent of MTV, I really was drawn to Refugee and American Girl, and I've grown to love Tom Petty. Sad that he's not with us anymore. Damn the Torpedoes. This may be my favorite Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers album. But I really enjoy his solo effort, Wildflowers, and I hope to get that on vinyl. I think I know it was released in a box set, so hopefully I can pick that up individually at some point. So number 20 is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Number 19 is Mr. Neil Young. Love Neil Young. His solo work, of course, and his work with Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. He's such an interesting person. He sticks to his guns. He's has his opinions, and he's a very smart man. And I think he just writes beautiful songs. And one thing I like about Neil is that he was always evolving. He never stuck to one true form of music. He always evolved and changed and revisited acoustic or electric, So I love Neil Young. All right. at number 18 is the Beach Boys. So a big fan of the Beach Boys. Of course, I love the surf music and the pop Beach Boys era, but I love the Pet Sounds, Smile, that era especially. Brian Wilson is just a genius. Finally got my hands on a copy of Pet Sounds thanks to Dylan at Noble Records. He recently got a couple copies, and I pinged him about it if he'd be open to selling me one, and he did. So hopefully that'll get here soon. So I'm anxious to get my hands on that because I love that album so much. I have the Pet Sounds Sessions box set on CD that I picked up many years ago. Yeah, just love the Beach Boys. Brian Wilson is a genius. Was lucky enough to see him a few times. I saw him do Smile, I saw him do Pet Sounds, and I saw him just solo, not with any specific theme for his concert. Never got to see the Beach Boys in person, but happy I saw Brian Wilson. So love the Beach Boys. Number 17 is ELO. Great band, mostly from the 70s, led by Jeff Lynne. Recently saw them back in August, which was phenomenal. My wife and I went to see them. It was a great show. That was a bucket list item for me. Yeah, so ELO, definitely interesting. Brought in, classical instruments like cellos and violins into a rock setting, and made it work, and it worked really well. Just love them. This is probably my favorite album by them, Face the Music. It has Fire in a High, which is a great instrumental song. Evil Woman, big hit for them. Strange Magic. Great album. Jeff Lynne is a great songwriter, great music arranger, great producer, as he's shown in his later years. He produced Roy Orbison, George Harrison, Bob Dylan, the Beatles when they reunited for the anthology releases, Traveling Wilburys. So I love ELO. So number 16. I've talked about this band before, and it's the Monkees. Love the Monkees from a very young age. Of course, introduced to them through the television show. In about 1976, my family bought a compilation record of the Monkees, 2-album set from RCA, and I just played that thing to death because I love the music so much, and that never went away. I appreciate them for what they were, and I appreciate where they went. This album here, Headquarters, the 4 members of the band, Davy Jones, Mike Nesmith, Peter Tork, and Mickey Dolenz, all play their own instruments and sing songs and wrote the songs, and broke that mold of they don't play their own instruments. They're one of my favorite bands, and I love their whole catalog. The Monkees coming in at number 16. So coming in at 15, sticking with the Monkees theme, it's Michael Nesmith. Very big fan of Michael Nesmith. Happy to see that he's getting out there again past several years. Put out a great live album earlier this year, which I absolutely love. He is just a fantastic songwriter and singer, in my opinion. I love his work. Um, he, of course, had after he left the Monkees, he started the first national band, which kind of led the charge into country rock, along with like Graham Parsons and Flying Burrito Brothers and bands like that. He was one of the ones that really pushed that forward. Like I said, great songwriter. He's a brilliant man. He, of course, he wasn't the first to make a music video, but he was certainly the first to turn the format into television show. So he started Pop Clips, which then turned into MTV. He recently put out an autobiography called Infinite Tuesday, an autobiographical riff. I read that, and that was fantastic. He tells a lot of great stories in that book. He's very, very, very smart man. I'd love to know what his IQ is. He's very forward-thinking and at the forefront of a lot of things, including country rock. So yeah, Michael Nesmith came in at number 15. So number 14, I've talked about this artist before. It's Jewel. What can I say? I just really love her music, especially this first album called Pieces of You. This album means a lot to me because when it came out, around that time I was going through some difficult things, and it really helped me. She is a very interesting person. Again, another very smart, intellectual type. I'd classify her songwriting in the vein of Bob Dylan. Although it may be a little more autobiographical to her life, not just stories. But yeah, she's fantastic. So her big fan of her more earlier work. Her first four or five albums I really, really enjoy. Then she started gearing off a little bit into the country vein. Didn't care as much for that work. And then she put out a couple like children's albums, like a lullaby album and a children's songs album. Those are fun and good. I've played them when my daughter was born several years ago. And recently, the past couple years, she put out an album called Picking Up the Pieces, which kind of she wrote about after her divorce with her ex-husband. And it's kind of more in the vein of this album, so I really, really enjoy that one. But Jewel coming in at number 14. I highly recommend you check out her work, especially this album, if you're not familiar. So number 13, Mr. Johnny Cash. Another prolific songwriter. Very interesting man. He had quite a career. Lots of ups and downs. I really enjoy just about all of his work from the 50s Sun Records era into the 60s with Folsom Prison, then into the 70s, moving more into a little more political stuff, songs about America, his gospel stuff. into the 80s with, he did a lot of collaborating with like Waylon Jennings and the Highwaymen, and into the 90s and 2000s with his American recordings. Just really enjoy his work. He had quite a career. So Johnny Cash, coming in at number 13. Right, so number 12. Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa, another very, very interesting man, very intellectual. Can pretty much say there's no one like him, and probably will never be anyone like this guy. Amazing guitarist. I really didn't explore his catalog up until like this year, really. I've listened to him in the past, but I even have some DVDs and stuff of him that I bought years ago that I really enjoyed. But it wasn't really until this year that I really started exploring his catalog, and he's grown into one of my absolute favorites. This is one of my favorite albums, Apostrophe. I find this era, the very late 60s, early 70s, to be my favorite period of his. Hot Rats is my favorite album. That was a grail for me that I recently picked up from a contest prize, which was awesome. Yeah, this guy's prolific. He's got quite a catalog. Just really enjoy his work. He's quite the wordsmith and a heck of a guitarist. I wish he would get mentioned more when people talk about best guitarist, because he's right up there, at least for me. He is he's incredible. He's a great guitarist. So Frank Zappa coming in at number 12. Number 11 is Phil Collins. Phil Collins gets a bad rap, in my opinion. All because he was everywhere you looked in the mid-'80s. It seemed like everything he touched turned to gold, almost. He was winning Grammy Awards and even Oscar Awards. Of course, the Oscar wasn't until a little later. But the hits, and he became a great producer for people like Philip Bailey from Earth, Wind & Fire, and Frida from ABBA, and Eric Clapton. But him as a solo artist, he just put out some damn good albums, in my opinion. His first solo release, Face Value, it's probably my favorite, and had the hit In the Air Tonight. I think that really skyrocketed his career. Then, of course, Hello, I Must Be Going, and No Jacket Required, but Seriously. Just wrote some great songs. I got to see him this month, a few weeks ago. It was a great show. It's hard to see him not be his old vibrant self. He's a little more decrepit these days. He has to walk with a cane and has some spine issues. Can't play the drums anymore. But it was still a heck of a show. Very entertaining. It's good to see him out there. Of course, I admire him for the drummer he was. One of my absolute favorite drummers. He definitely does not get the credit that I think he should for his drum playing. yeah, he just a great artist. Going back to, like I said, in the mid '80s, you couldn't get away from him. He was, appearing on Miami Vice. He played Live Aid both in Wembley Stadium and JFK in the U.S. He was the only artist to do that. Plus, he played with Led Zeppelin and Eric Clapton, and Sting. So he was quite the energetic performer. This guy, and I love Phil Collins.